A long time ago, I enrolled in a series of workshops to try to become a better musician. And every morning, the teacher would start the class by quizzing us students. He would ask questions like, what's a major third of B flat? And every morning, I would avert my eyes because I didn't want him to choose me to answer the question. I didn't know the answers to the question, and I didn't even really understand why it was important. But then one day, I realized that I could use the guitar fretboard as a kind of answer key, a kind of cheat sheet. And what I did is I imagined in my mind where the B flat was, and then I just memorized what the shape of a major third is from there. It looks like this, B flat D. And then finally, I could answer his questions every morning. I like to think I became kind of the envy of my classmates, but I still didn't realize what was the purpose of that. When we look at the piano keyboard, even if you've never played one of these things, I could tell you how simple it is. It's up this way and down this way, and every single octave looks exactly the same. But that is not true of the guitar, not at all. And that's one of the things that makes the guitar fretboard so confusing. We've got up this way, but wait, we've also got up this way. And when we go this way, the shapes change. And if we want to play our pentatonic shapes going up this way, they also change. It seems so confusing, but really there is a system to it, and there are very good reasons for why it's designed this way. The fretboard is a map, we just have to learn how to read it. Now, if you've ever taken lessons with me, you know how much I talk about memorizing the notes on the low E and the A string. And why is that? Because those strings can be landmarks for everything else that you need to find on the fretboard. They're the landmarks for our scale shapes, for our chord shapes, for our arpeggios, for octaves, for interval shapes, for everything that we need. Now, I've done other videos on how to memorize those. In this video, we're just going to talk about how to use those landmarks. So let's start with a simple one. If this is C here, 8th fret of the bottom string, then this is C here as well. 2 frets up, 2 strings up. So why is that useful? Well, you could show off you know where C is, but more than that, now you can use that to know where all the roots are in scale shapes, chord shapes. As an example, here's C minor pentatonic. That's just easy shape, right? And here's the root. Not only do we have the root that we found the shape with, C on the low E, but now we also know there's an important root there. And that root is so useful to know because when we play licks in C minor pentatonic or whatever pentatonic, landing some of those licks on the root is a great sound. It is very useful for phrasing our solos and for resolving certain lines. Here's an example. And knowing that octave shape means that we know where the root is in a simple chord shape. For example, let's say we had a C major chord. We generally find that C major chord based on knowing the root on the low E string in this case. But then we can see that we actually have that same root that we found earlier inside that chord, right? Or let's say we had a C minor chord. The same thing applies, right? If I take my standard C minor bar chord shape from there, there's the root I found the chord by, but it means I also have that root inside the chord. It's the same one, of course. Now, why is that useful? Well, of course, we can use chords in our solos, and now we know not only where the roots are at the bottom of the chord, we know where the root is in the middle of the chord that we can resolve to. See, we can use chords and soloing together, whether we use it in a solo or whether we're just playing a more kind of advanced or busier style of rhythm guitar playing. Let's find our landmarks to find the scales. You probably already do that to some degree if you've ever learned easy shape C minor pentatonic, but we can do that for all the pentatonic shapes, right? There are 5 pentatonic shapes, but that means that 4 of them are based on landmarks from the low E and the A. Let's do my other favorite pentatonic shape, which is what most people call shape 4. I call it funny B string shape. If I find C on the A string, that's 3rd fret C, right? Then I just play funny B string shape from there. And And of course, I didn't memorize that C minor pentatonic is C, E flat, F, G, B flat, C. It's just the shape from the root. And now, I can play all the pentatonic shapes wherever I need them, right? Let's say I found a C up here on the 15th fret. That's basically the same. I would play a funny B string shape from there. And eventually, when you get to know all your pentatonic shapes, you could play the other ones. I could use that same 15th fret landmark C and play shape 3, which is like this. 13, 15, 13, 15, 13, 15, 12, 15, 13, 16, 13, 15. It's hard to say the numbers. It's actually far easier just to visualize the shape from the landmark and play it from there. Now, once you associate the landmark, the root for whatever key, with the pentatonic shapes, you can play up and down the fretboard easily. You could move all the way up and all the way down. There'd be nothing stopping you. Download the free guitar intervals cheat sheet from my website. And don't forget that we've got all the tabs from this video on our Patreon, plus jam tracks, plus practice tips, and my book called Guitar Soloing Like a Pro is available on Amazon. Let's take this whole concept further. So far, we've been using landmarks and starting on those landmarks. But just because we have a landmark doesn't mean we need to start on the landmark. And this is where we can learn all kinds of cool licks like arpeggios. Arpeggios are a great example of using a landmark. For example, let's say I have this C minor bar chord way down here, the 3rd fret. I found that C minor bar chord by finding C root here at the 3rd fret of the A string, but it doesn't mean I have to play that note. I could imagine the whole chord shape and just think of a little piece of it, maybe just the top 3 notes. We could see how cool that would sound as a short but quick little arpeggio, and then just descending from minor pentatonic from there. So what happened there is I didn't need to memorize that the 5th fret of the G string, this one, is a C note. I actually just used the landmark below, the C on the A string, because that's what most students are more familiar with. If you just get fast at those low E and A strings, you'll see you didn't need to memorize that that one was a C. But we know that one's a C too, right? Because now for me, this was a great light bulb moment. It really opened my eyes to understanding the fretboard and music better. What was a great light bulb moment for you? Let me know in the comments, what was a moment, a thing that you learned that just really took your ability to a whole nother level? Let's try another arpeggio. Let's take this C bar chord way up here at the 8th fret. Standard bar chord shape, right? And again, we don't have to use that low C that we found or even the whole chord. We can just now use a small part of it as an arpeggio linking to minor pentatonic scale. That chord may look familiar to you if you've ever played a certain song in a different key, but you know. Now, if I said to you play a C minor 7 arpeggio, you know, you might think, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what the 7 is. Would you calculate what the 7 is in a C minor chord? You could do that. It's a B flat in a C minor 7 chord, but we don't need to do that, right? Again, we can just picture what is a C minor 7 bar chord. We could put pinky there. That would make a really cool 7. It is a B flat, but it didn't matter. I know where it is. So I can play the chord, which means I can also play an arpeggio of the chord. And I can use that in any solo. And as you start to really internalize these landmarks and how everything connects, you'll start to see that in fact, the chord shapes start to look a heck of a lot like the pentatonic shapes. When we look at this C minor chord shape, it sure looks a lot like this C minor pentatonic shape, doesn't it? They fit over top of one another. We could combine all three concepts we have right now: the chord, the arpeggio, and the lick. So now here's my favorite one. If I said to you, what's a major third of A? Would you know the answer? And does it matter? I would argue that it actually does not matter. What does matter is that we can find a major third on the fretboard. Why is that? Because a major third is a very cool sound. We want to be able to target and grab that sound at any moment. As soon as I figured this out and memorized these intervals, that was when I had all these new great sounding licks at my disposal right there, because I could just see it and then I could play it. Let's say we're playing a blues in A. Often what we do in blues is that we play minor pentatonic over a major key. And that doesn't really make sense, but it's the sound of the blues, right? Minor over major. Well, what that really means is that we can bring that major sound back in, and we can start with the dissonant and bluesy minor pentatonic, but land on the major third, which gives us precisely that major sound. Here's A minor pentatonic with the blue note descending but landing on the major third. Now, when I do that, a lot of students first say, "Oh, that sounds weird at the end." But in the context, you'll see it's going to sound very cool, because it's going to highlight the actual chords underneath. And so how do I know where that major third is? Again, I didn't calculate that the major third is C sharp. I know that, and yes, I know where a C sharp is, but it's far faster to just memorize the shape of a major third. It's that. And if we remember our octave shape is here. So we have a root up there, and if we have a root up there, it means we have a major third up there. So we could resolve to that major third as well. Different intervals have different sounds, and we want that color. We want to be able to grab that sound whenever we hear it coming, and any of those sounds that are in the chords underneath, we could play. So for example, we could use a minor 7. How would I know what a minor 7 of A is? Well, I can just memorize the shape, right? It's that, or it's in the chord. Now think of it this way. If I had have said to you, play a solo but land on a minor 7, you would say, what? But you can do it. Now you just know where it is, and that's all you need to know. And finally, let's say the song changes to a D chord, because, well, a 12 bar in blues probably would change to a D chord, right? I can just use the same methods to target any of the cool notes of a D chord, like the major third of a D chord. I know where D is, so I know where the major third is. Or I know where the D7 chord is, so I know where the minor 7 is. Or the major third here. Or combine major third, minor 7, and fifth of a D chord. That sounds crazy. It's not hard. If you memorize the landmarks and memorize the interval shapes, every sound that you need is right there for you without really having to calculate any of it. Remember, I've got that free intervals cheat sheet on my website you can download. You can do it. If you want more help on understanding the fretboard and becoming a better guitar player, I'm going to put a video on the screen right here for you. And don't forget, we've got our book called Guitar Soloing Like a Pro from Amazon, and our Patreon has loads more lessons, plus tabs and jam tracks and all kinds of things that will help you become a better guitar player today. My name is Blue Morris, and I teach guitar lessons here in Vancouver. I'll see you in the next one.